Watching GVTV News.
Thanks, Gloria, and I'm Randy Hansen. In World News headlines today. Federal court rejects $285 million Citigroup toxic mortgage debt settlement. And Federal Reserve secretly committed $7 trillion to save the nation's largest banks. But it's not too secret because we just told you about it. UN Commission accuses Syrian forces of crimes against humanity. In Yemen, out of Yemen, hundreds of thousands of protesters demand President face charges. And Egyptian military attempts to purchase 21 tons of U.S.-made tear gas. UN criticizes Libya for holding thousands of prisoners without legal process. United Nations Climate Change Conference in South Africa enters second day. And Congressman Barney Franks announces he will not seek re-election. Georgia woman claims she had 13-year affair with GOP hopeful Herman Cain. An injured Iraq War veteran Scott Olson gives first interview since OWS tear gas shooting. An Occupy Los Angeles eviction averted. An Israeli military apologizes for degrading a strip search of prominent New York Times photographer. I guess he should get special treatment. American Airlines parent company declares bankruptcy. And psychiatrists conclude alleged Norway mass killer insane may avoid prison time. But before these stories, GVTV News would like to thank one of our underwriters who supports your only visual video news media in Nevada County. That's right, it's us. GVTV News. Today's first world news story, Federal Reserve in New York has rejected a proposed $285 million settlement between Citigroup and Securities and Exchange Commission over Citigroup's sale of toxic mortgage debt. Judge Jed Rakoff said the proposed settlement was neither reasonable nor fair nor adequate nor in the public interest. Rakoff described Citigroup as a recidivist and said a $285 million settlement was pocket change to any entity as large as Citigroup. The SEC had accused Citigroup of selling $1 billion of deceptive mortgage-backed securities in 2007. Just as the nation's housing bubble was about to burst, Citigroup made $160 million in profits on the transaction, while investors lost $700 million. The Bloomberg News Agency has revealed new details about the Federal Reserve secretly committing more than $7 trillion to save the nation's largest banks in 2008 and 2009. According to the new report, banks made an estimated $13 billion in income because the government was loaning money at below market rates. Recipients of secret loans included Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, Bank of America, Citigroup, and Morgan Stanley. What a group. United Nations Commission of Inquiry has accused the Syrian military and security forces of committing crimes against humanity, including murder, torture, and rape. Paulo Pinheiro, chair of the UN inquiry, said that the commission has concluded, based on its findings, that members of the Syrian army and security force have committed crimes against humanity in their repression of a largely civilian population in the context of peaceful protest movement. These crimes include murder, torture, rape, and other forms of sexual violence of comparative gravity, imprisonment, or other severe deprivation of liberty, which occurs in different locations. United Nations estimated Syrian security forces have killed at least 3,500 people, including 256 children, since the pro-democracy protests began. One soldier testified that he had defected after witnessing the shooting of a 2-year-old girl by an officer who said that he did not want her to grow into a demonstrator. Hundreds of thousands of Yemenis are demonstrating across the country to demand President Ali Abdullah Saleh face trial for charges ranging from corruption to deadly crackdowns on protests. Last week, Saleh signed a deal with Saudi Arabia in which he agreed to step down in return for immunity from prosecution for himself and his family. Mass protests have taken place since Saleh returned to Yemen Saturday night. On Monday, Yemeni Nobel Peace Laureate Tawakkul Karman traveled to The Hague to ask the International Criminal Court to investigate Saleh, and said, "I promise people in Yemen, the youth, the whole people in Yemen, women and children, I told them after they announced that I win a Nobel Peace Prize, the first job I will do is taking the file of criminal Ali Saleh to the ICC. I am here to tell the ICC they have to try Ali Saleh and his regime when they killed people." Egypt is in the second day of its first parliamentary election since the ouster of longtime President Hosni Mubarak earlier this year. Turnout was reported to be high on Monday, and other news: Egyptian military is reportedly in the process of purchasing 21 tons of tear gas from the U.S. company Combined Systems. Workers at the Suez seaport say an initial 7-ton shipment of U.S.-made tear gas has already entered the port. Egyptian forces have used the tear gas in an attempt to break up the recent mass protest against military rule in Tahrir Square. United Nations is criticizing the newly installed Libyan government for holding about 7,000 prisoners without access to a legal process. In Durban, South Africa, a major United Nations conference on climate change has entered its second day. The talks in Durban have been described as the last chance for world leaders to set another round of legally binding greenhouse gas emission targets before the first stage of Kyoto Protocol ends in 2012. Tasneem Aesop works with the Worldwide Fund for Nature in South Africa and said, "We do run the risk of losing the Kyoto Protocol, the only rules-based system that we have, and that would be devastating. And what would be devastating is that the sum total of all that could once again break down the trust that we have in multi-unilateral process, that only process that is inclusive and gives voice to the most vulnerable, so that we come to this COP with all to play. This allows the risks that I've spoken about, but also the opportunities that can exist for parties to, in fact, rise to the occasion. And the missing element, we believe, is political leadership." Selwyn Hard, a climate negotiator from Barbados, called on wealthy nations to do more to help protect members of the AOSIS, the Alliance of the Small Island States, and said the physical consequences will be extinction for some of the small islands in developing states. That is not a deal that we are prepared to sign up to. The chair of the AOSIS said was quite clear. At the heart of any agreement should be the principle that no country is expendable. We cannot afford, and we should not, it's morally and unethically to sign an agreement that will result in the demise of a single nation state. And longtime Democratic Representative Barney Franks of Massachusetts has announced he will not seek re-election. He said, "I don't want to be torn between full-fledged campaign in a district with 325,000 new people and my obligation to the existing constituents, and that's reinforced by the fact that I would have a hard time going to 325,000 new people, some of them in areas that I am not very familiar with, like Blackstone Valley, and say, by the way, I'd like to be your congressman for 2 years because it was always clear that I would be retiring after the next term." Barney Franks is the top Democrat in the House Financial Services Committee. While serving in the chair in the committee, he successfully won passage of the Dodd-Frank Act that introduced new financial regulations on Wall Street. Frank has represented Massachusetts' 4th Congressional District for 30 years. In 1987, Frank came out as gay, becoming the first member of Congress to do so voluntarily. A Georgia woman has come forward to say that she carried on a 13-year affair with Republican presidential hopeful Herman Cain. The allegations come just weeks after it emerged from the National Restaurant Association had to pay settlements to two women who accused Cain of sexual harassment. Cain denied he had an affair but acknowledged being friends with the woman. She's the first one not from Chicago, too. That is correct. Iraq War veteran Scott Olson, Occupy Oakland protester who was injured last month after authorities fired non-lethal projectiles into a crowd, had been released from the hospital. Yesterday, IndieBay.org posted an interview with Olson, who suffered a fractured skull, was placed in a medical-induced coma as a result of his injury. Olson says his thoughts are clear, but he has struggled to regain his speech. Olson answered questions about ongoing investigation into the incident that led to his hospitalization. And he said, "You would think something like this wouldn't take too long to find out who's responsible, but it's been 1 month. How long does it take to see who fired this at me?" Olson went on to urge all parties involved in the Occupy protest, including law enforcement and demonstrators, to pursue nonviolence. Kind of like Rodney King. Scott Olson, the Iraq War veteran Occupy protester, said, "To all of them, I would have to say, stay peaceful, because that's what it's about. It's about working together, working with one another, and it's about being open and with each other. And that's how we can solve our problems." An anticipated eviction of the occupied Los Angeles was averted Monday, despite a deadline set by Mayor Antonio Villaraigosa. Though thousands of protesters faced off against officers carrying batons and riot cuffs yesterday, just 4 arrests were made. City officials have not said whether they will make another attempt to clear a City Hall encampment. And the Israel military has apologized to a photographer from the New York Times for strip searching and humiliating her at a security checkpoint. Lindsay Addario says she was forced to go through the X-ray machine 3 times, even though she told Israeli officers she was pregnant. So soldiers reportedly watched and laughed at her while she was forced through the machine. Addario said she worked in more than 60 countries but has never been treated with such blatant cruelty. In March, Addario was among 4 reporters captured in Libya by forces loyal to Colonel Muammar Gaddafi and held for 6 days. Parent company American Airlines has declared bankruptcy. And court-appointed psychiatrists in Norway have reportedly concluded the mass killer Anders Behring Breivik is criminally insane. That means he could be committed to a psychiatric institution indefinitely rather than face a jail term for killing 77 people in July. And that's it for the World News today. Now another thanks to one of our underwriters who supports your only visual video news media in Nevada County. That's right, it's us, GVTV News.
Soundcheck Music Center, the rock and roll connection. We have guitars, amps, drum equipment, sound accessories, lessons, and repairs. We are located at 671 Maltman Drive, Grass Valley. 530-272-7236, open 7 days a week.
Something happening here, but what it is ain't exactly clear. There's a man with a gun over there, telling me I got to beware.
That's right, it's time for the police blotter and pictures in the blotter, not from these actual events, but used for visual aid only. Grass Valley Police Department on Thursday, 8:58 a.m. A caller from 200 block of Mill Street reported that 3 weeks ago a neighbor child had stolen recyclables from the caller. 12:09 p.m. caller reported that a man had been standing in the same place in East Main Street for the last 4 hours and was concerned for the individual's well-being. Officers made contact and this individual declined assistance from a homeless shelter. 5:30 p.m. caller reported a driver of a vehicle was driving slow, then on the right shoulder and into oncoming traffic in the area of McCourtney Road north of Little Pond. At 7:18 p.m., a caller from 400 block of Brunswick Drive reported theft. The man was stopped by officers who convinced him to return and pay for her stolen items. Oh, she, not he. 10:34 p.m., caller report on the 100 block of Stewart Street reported being harassed. And 10:52 p.m., a caller from 200 block of Maiden Lane reported a vehicle drove the wrong way up the street, shining a high-powered flashlight at the caller and drew what appeared to be a weapon. On Friday, 12:04 a.m., a caller from 100 block of Berry Hill Drive reported a group of drunken men came to his son's window and asked if he wanted to buy some marijuana. In Nevada County Sheriff's Office on Thursday, 3:23 p.m., caller reported motorhome fire in 12,600 block of Forest Drive. The incident was transferred to CAL FIRE. And 5:42 p.m., a woman, 15,300 block of Cascade Loop, called to report her 18-year-old son was causing a disturbance in her home. She reported that the house was getting torn apart, the doors were being broken. Several neighbors had also called to report the sounds of yelling and doors and glass breaking. At 10:50 a.m., caller reported a burglary at 21,800 block of McDaniel Road. And 11:53 p.m., a caller from 25,500 block of Table Meadow Road reported a chimney fire that had possibly spread to a structure. The incident was transferred to CAL FIRE. Grass Valley Police Department on Sunday, 1:47 p.m., caller from 800 block of Forest Glade Circle reported her son fell from a zip line, hit his head on a cinder block, and was bleeding. 1:58 p.m., caller from Condon Park reported definitive smell of marijuana at the skate park and requested officers drive through the area to look for anything suspicious. In Nevada County Sheriff's Office on Sunday, 10:11 a.m., a caller from 17,700 block of Grizzly Bear Drive reported a cow in the roadway of Lime Kiln Road. At 2:02 p.m., a caller from 11,300 block of Ridge Road reported her vehicle had been egged, possibly by her neighbor. At 4:04 p.m., a caller on 18,300 block of McCourtney Road reported an explosion coming from neighbor's home on the corner of Bears Lane. The caller said the neighbor are always shooting guns on the property. At 7:53 p.m., caller parked on the side of North Bloomfield Road reported being assaulted. The caller accidentally sprayed their own infant in the face with mace while spraying the assailant, who then drove off in a silver Ford F-150 truck. Dispatch had no further information on the status of the infant. In Nevada City Police Department on Sunday, 12:16 p.m., caller from Washington Street reported multiple subjects smoking marijuana in the parking lot next to St. Canis Catholic Church. Didn't think we'd forget her, did you? And that's it for the Police Blotter today. Now another thanks to one of our underwriters who supports your only visual video news media in Nevada County. That's right, it's us, GVTV News. In today's local news headlines, providing presents for needy kids, and Grass Valley teen killed in Nevada rollover, and a heckle steps down from top Grass Valley post. And our first local story written by Christopher Rosacker of the Union. For the last 2 decades, Grass Valley residents, law enforcement, and Kmart have combined efforts to provide Christmas presents to between 300 and 400 underprivileged youth, dangling on a Christmas tree in the lobby of the Grass Valley Police Department located at 129 South Auburn Street. Nearly 20 children have placed 3 wishes on holiday tags, said Officer Jim Amaral. The wishing tree tags also include the child's name, gender, and age. For the last 20 years, generous residents have taken these cards, purchased the gifts, wrapped them, and brought them back to the police station for the kids to open. The Caring and Sharing program began in 1991 and is sponsored by the Grass Valley Police Officers Association, Amaral added. Children are referred to the program from community members as well as other public service agencies. The program is designed to help less fortunate children while building positive relationships between law enforcement, the children, and their families. In addition to wish gifts, generous residents can also make monetary donations to the Police Association, Amaral said, which will be used to give the kids a shopping spree December 10th at Kmart. Best part of it is when the kids get to use money. Most of them, they don't buy for themselves, they buy for something for their brothers or sisters because they normally don't have the money to do that. That's the sentiment we're hoping to instill, Amaral added. After the shopping spree, the children are treated to a holiday breakfast and get to meet Santa Claus at Kmart, who gives them the presents purchased by the community members. The deadline for returning gifts for the wishing tree is December 6th. Amaral asked that the gifts have names on them so the officers know who to give them to. And in another Christopher Rosacker story out of the Union, a very sad one, an 18-year-old Grass Valley resident was killed in a car wreck on Interstate 80 east of Reno Wednesday morning. Taylor S. Barney died after being ejected from the back seat of a 1999 Jeep Grand Cherokee driven westbound on Interstate 80 by 18-year-old Kevin A. Mass, according to the NHP spokesperson Chuck Allen. Mass and another passenger, 19-year-old Max Talbert, were wearing seat belts and only sustained minor injuries. Mass and Talbert, also Grass Valley residents, were taken by ground ambulance to Reno Regional Medical Center. The wreck occurred at approximately 7:24 a.m. Wednesday, about 19 miles east of Fernley in Churchill County. No other vehicles were involved. Alcohol is believed to be a contributing factor in the crash. There was plenty of evidence that alcohol was a definite factor, Allen said. Pending toxicology reports, Mass could face multiple charges. Preliminary crash investigation details indicate that Mass allowed his Jeep to drift towards the center median, then overcorrected the steering wheel back and forth before entering a broadside skid. The SUV then rolled over several times, Allen reported, ejecting Barney. Talbot played football and basketball at Nevada Union High School. The Lahontan Valley News and Fallon Eagle Standard is a sister publication of the Union. That's where this report actually came from. In a Trina Kleiss story from the Union, with continuing budget effects affecting the upper levels of management in Grass Valley, Joe Heckel has stepped down as Community Development Director, and the city does not plan to fill that position. Heckel's departure from the City Hall means a savings of about $150,000 during this and next year's fiscal year, City Administrator Dan Haller said Monday. City Development staff will report to Building Director Tom Last, who is receiving a 5% raise to assume the extra duties. City Council members and staff lauded Heckel for his vision of the city, making it a unique and special place for all to enjoy, Mayor Janet Arbuckle said, recognizing Heckel recently. Joe is truly an example of what one man can do to a community. Councilman Jason Foyer added during last week's City Council meeting, "We've given Joe a plaque, but Joe has put his stamp all over the community." One of Heckel's early projects was the Gold Miners Inn Holiday Inn Express downtown. Like many projects to come after, the hotel represents both a step in the city's redevelopment effort and a major corporation acquiescing to local design demands. While some projects during the decade fall short of design goals, the city itself was set out for the new buildings to reflect the area's gold rush history. They typically finish closer to those standards than the corporations offered at the outset. One of Heckle's last contributions to the city was the designation of much of the Glenbrook Basin as a redevelopment area earlier this year, cementing those benefits for the city despite actions by the California government to wring cash from local redevelopment agencies in exchange for leaving the structure in place. Heckle declined to be interviewed about his accomplishments, but his staff described them in a funny and touching tribute to their boss. During the recent city council meeting, Clerk Sue Colbert described Heckle's vision as helping the community plan for its future by setting an admirable example, balancing growth while considering conservation of resources and the environment, providing the tools and information for members of the public to achieve the desired quality of life, and the eradication of pole signs, Colbert added to laughs from the audience. But it's a serious design issue. Big signs atop tall poles are much desired by businesses that would benefit from motorists passing by on the freeway, much detested by those striving to keep Grass Valley from looking like anywhere USA. In accepting the accolades, Heckle offered his own view of highlights from his decade: creation of a downtown strategic plan, a master facility plan, historic 1872 town site ordinance. Heckle described his efforts as trying to improve the quality of life by bettering where we shop, play, and recreate. Sorry about that. That's a large goal achieved step by step, Heckle said, adding he plans to stay in the area and get more involved with the community. I'm certain the city will go on to achieve far greater things. I will be watching the city's progress with interest. Well, he'll be sorely missed. Hope he gets into
Christopher's
good.
Old World Deli
That's it for
Company has brought its delicious
GVTV News
food
today.
and service downtown.
Thank Associated Press, Union, and others for the source of our news. Don't forget, we
like
broadcast
desserts?
3 times a day. Public access, NCTV,
They got 'em.
Comcast Cable, Channel 11, and Suddenlink Channel
You like
16. and Trucking
international
off the
style
Sierra.
lunches?
8 a.m., 3 p.m., 7:30 p.m., Monday through
got 'em.
Friday, random other times. Check the website for that. We are on NevadaCountyTV.org. Video on demand there
parties,
and stream there.
get-togethers,
GVTV.org,
weddings.
GrassValleyTelevision.com, and RuralCountyTelevisionNetwork.me.com. We also post to Facebook, YouTube, Blip.tv, and a free video podcast on iTunes. You can get us on smartphones, PSP, and many handheld devices. And we have RSS feed. And that's it today. And as far as I know, tomorrow should be Thursday.